Hello, everybody. Hey, welcome. And if you're watching the replay, hi, good to see you. I'm going to get Instagram going here real quick. We will get to it. Okay. All right. How's it going? This was kind of a last minute thing. We had some wires crossed, but I'm here. We're going to be chatting today about the reasons that we binge and overeat. Let me get Instagram turned on. Hey, Instagram. I'm going to put y'all over here. And then if you're here on Facebook, let me know, or YouTube or whatever, let me know in the comment section where you're watching from, how you're doing. Hello, Joy is Young, Sam Main Queen, and Instagram, Empowered Feminista, Kay Grosser, Kathy, hello, Justin, and Samantha Castle. Hey, ladies. Samantha, hi. Okay, let me know where you're watching from. If you're watching on YouTube or Facebook, I am having a feeling, I've done this for a few weeks now, and I'm never seeing any comments from people on Facebook. So I'm feeling like it's not working on Facebook somehow. I only ever see, because I see the event here, but I don't see the actual video. Hold on, let me just click this and see if it's working. Okay, I guess maybe it is working. I don't know. Hey, Samantha. Yes, over on Instagram. Good to see you. Anyone on Facebook, let me know if you're watching on Facebook. And if you're watching on YouTube, say hello. I don't have a ton of people because this was such a last minute one, but we'll go through this anyways. Okay, hey, Kathy McCormick, Honey Bear 8932. Good to see you on Instagram. And let me know how you are. If you're watching the replay, type replay, okay? Type that in the comment section and I'll say hi to you a little bit later. And then if you're watching live, let me know where you're watching from. Sharon Beth, hey. Okay, so what are we talking about today? We're going to be talking about the real reasons that we binge or overeat. And keep in mind, anytime I say binging, I also just mean regular overeating or emotional eating too, okay? So you don't necessarily have to be a binge eater. The way I define the difference between all of those terms is, emotional eating is just kind of like the general thing we do when we're feeling emotional. And it doesn't just have to be negative emotion. It could be happy emotion like celebration or familial love, right? You're hanging out with friends or social love or something like that, and you just want to have some food. It could also be where you're just feeling that emotion of craving and you just want to eat something. You don't even know why. You don't have to have a reason for it. That whole spectrum is emotional eating. You could be depressed, sad, anxious, and eat about that, and anywhere to the other end of the spectrum too. Okay, so that's emotional eating. And then I would say compulsive eating is sort of that thing where and this is kind of more like binge eating too, where you actually feel like you can't stop. You have a compulsion to eat and you don't know why and you don't know how to stop it. Okay, that would be compulsive. Binge eating, sorry, I took a shower and my hair's I'm just getting some of my hair out here. I always do that. And then binge eating would be more of kind of that end of the spectrum where you just eat more. So you've got regular overeating, which could be emotional eating. And then you've got binge eating. And the way I say the difference between the two is overeating is more just uncomfortable, where you just ate more than you needed to. And then binge eating is pain. It hurts, right? Okay. Judy Osborne, hey, good to see you from Tualatin, Oregon. Good to see you again. I saw you last week. I'm so glad you're here. Did folks lose sound on Instagram, or is it just Kathy? Kathy says, so she says, I think I got the notification from Instagram. I'm not sure. Yep. So you're on Instagram. You got the notification there. I see Judy from YouTube again, but I don't see anyone from Facebook. So I feel like we're having a problem on the StreamYard connection with Facebook or whatever. But Sharon Beth from Kentucky, Kathy McCormick from Colorado, and Sam Main Queen from Texas. So good to see you. Okay, you got it back, Kathy. Good. Okay. So that's kind of the way I would define the differences between these. And I also, I'm going to use the board a little bit today instead of my iPad, because I usually use the board during coaching, and then it's more natural for me. This was from a coaching call with a private client yesterday. So let me get rid of some of this. And then I also learned on that call that this red marker does not erase. So I have to use my handy dandy Windex to get that off of there. And then also my cat was really meowing at me today. Oh, she's looking at me. She knows I'm talking about her. She was meowing at me today because she couldn't get onto the desk because the chair was too far away. And I was like, what is wrong with you? And then I realized it was the chair. And sure enough, I pulled the chair right over and she came right up. Okay. So this kind of spectrum here, let's look at this spectrum of overeating. Thank you, Sharon Beth, for letting us know that you still have sound too. So we talked about this last week, like what is normal eating and then what is overeating and then what is binge eating, right? So we might say normal is here. We talked a lot about that and what is normal eating. So if you want to watch the video from last week, we went into that. You can kind of get what I mean. It's not an offensive term. It's just like if a human didn't have any other input, how would they normally eat, right? And then we've got where we kind of start overeating stuff. We might just have like regular overeating. And this is the one that I sort of define as just discomfort, right? You eat more than you need, but it's not painful yet. So it's uncomfortable. You don't need that much. But I'm not talking about frequency here. Like you might do it every day. You might do it once a week, whatever. And then we kind of get toward the end of the spectrum here is the more advanced, intense, anorexia, bulimia. And then before that, we have binge eating disorder, which is binge eating, but very regularly, right? And we have binge eating over here, maybe. And binge eating is kind of the level where I feel like there's also pain. Like you eat so much that it hurts your stomach, okay? That's kind of where I would put binge eating. And then binge eating disorder is like it's very regular. You do it several times a week or once, a couple times a month or whatever. And then on to anorexia and bulimia, perhaps, where you have those behaviors where you're trying to make up for things in bulimia. And then anorexia is learning, obviously, how to just not eat. And so when I'm talking to folks, the way name my website is about binge eating because I used to be a binge eater, but it applies to everybody who's anywhere in these areas. The stuff that we're talking about is going to be helpful. But overeating just being more uncomfortable, and then you might have compulsive in here somewhere as well. And I would say I would define all of this eating as emotional. And it just depends on the strength of the emotions and how much we do that, right? So emotional meaning, I'll give you another spectrum. I love these little spectrums. If you look at your emotions, you've got positive emotions, negative emotions, and neutral emotions. These are the ones that everyone associates with emotional eating, right? Sad, anxious, depressed. But as I was saying a minute ago, there's a whole spectrum of emotions. So you might have celebration, happiness that causes you to overeat, emotional eating, love, parties, whatever, social. That can be also a cause of emotional eating. And then we never talk about this middle part here, which is neutral emotion. Is like when you've craved something for so long and it's just a natural thing for you to crave, like craving or desire for food, like desire for overeating is what I mean. And craving, like desiring specific foods versus healthy foods or whatever. This is more of a neutral emotion because it doesn't necessarily have to have a cause. It could just be that you just want to eat or something because it's you. Like, for instance, mine always comes up after I have my salad in the afternoon. I always want more. That's a normal time for me to crave. I don't usually crave at night because it's not a pattern that I've developed, but I have developed a pattern of eating after lunch, having something sweet or salty or whatever. And so doesn't even have to be based on a specific negative or positive emotion. It can just be sort of neutral emotion where you just want that's an emotion, desire, right? And it just comes up, and that's a normal thing for the brain to do. So those are some reasons why we might overeat, right? because of emotions. And then what's interesting is like we could maybe put any overeating is, I always say it's kind of 100% emotional eating. Every time you overeat, it's 100% emotional. Why? Because you're always in one of these emotions. And what we say is that our thoughts, in my coaching, what we say is that our thoughts create our feelings, our emotions, and our emotions are what cause us to act. They cause our actions. So for instance, if we're feeling sad and we want to get out of that feeling, we might use food to try to get out of that feeling, right? And so what I'm saying is that when I say 100% of our overeating comes from emotions, so I'll give you an example of that. Like, even let's say you're eating nutritarian food. Let me turn off my phone real quick. Let's say you're eating 100% nutritarian food, maybe perfect nutritarian. You could still have emotional eating because the quantities that you're eating, maybe you're eating too much of that. So I'll give you an example. Like I remember, and I have a bunch of videos about this too back in 2016 of being 100% nutritarian, like seriously, no other junk foods. And I was still binging, right? And I did that for several years. And it was a mystery for me for the longest time. Why am I still binging? And it's emotional because so for instance, we have craving and desire. Like, do you guys, let me ask you if you resonate with this at all. Do you resonate with the idea of sometimes just having cravings without knowing why, right? Like you're not really sure why, you just crave and then you just start eating. And what's interesting is that usually what we're doing is we're trying to make that craving go away. We're trying to make that urge go away. We could call this an urge too, right? An urge to eat. These are emotions, urge, desire, craving. These are emotions that we have. And sometimes there's not even anything specific that set it off except for maybe like the time of day. Like, oh, we always have something sweet after our salad or whatever. Do you guys relate with this of having maybe a time of day where you crave a lot? Let me know in the comment section if there's a time of day and a specific kind of food that you generally will be interested in at these times. Yes. So Kathy says, I'm on Instagram. She says, I'm terrible at making the urge to emotionally eat go away. Absolutely. That's what we're talking about, this middle area here, right? The middle area of neutral emotion, which is just that urge to overeat. And this could be based on anything. Kathy, can you share with us, when do you usually get that urge? Like, when does that come up for you usually? So craving, desire, urge, notice that it's a neutral emotion. It doesn't have to be based on anything. And this comes from the brain, the way that the brain works, how it just, once a pattern has been repeated so many times, the brain learns that, like actually learns it as if it's important, right? As if it's, oh, we do this all the time, so it must be important. So let me keep urging them. And that's honestly what's so sad about it is that's really all that's happened is you've done it so many times that the brain has learned to do it. So now it urges you to do it. It's not like, and so maybe it's like however many times we've been sad in our life, we've turned to food in order to make that go away. We actually created that pattern because we used food at a time where we were sad, and then the brain learned that, and then it's like, oh, let's keep doing that. And so then every time you get sad, it's like, oh, no, I got you. We're going to eat. That's what makes sad go away, right? When in fact, what we really want to do is understand those triggers, know why they happen, and deal with the emotion of the situation. Why are we sad? We want to deal with that. And at the same time, get good at, I don't want to use the resisting, but I mean like not giving in. I'll explain the difference in a sec. So Michelle says, I struggle with fast food throughout the day. Yep. So cravings for fast food. Michelle, if you don't mind, you're on YouTube. Would you mind sharing which ones you have made a pattern of? What are the foods that you tend to go to and like when during the day? And Sharon on Instagram says, mid-afternoon when I'm winding down energetically and I'm worn out from dealing with people all day, I want salt or sugar. Absolutely. And the reason is because, as I just said, you just made a pattern of that. That's all you've done is used food to comfort ourselves through that tiredness and exhaustion And we know that our willpower depletes in the end of the day as well. So then we're just kind of like, whatever, let's have the food to change our emotion a little bit. And what we're really trying to do is, all we want to do is just change that emotion because it's an uncomfortable emotion, right? And then Kathy responds and says, afternoons are yeah, that's me too. Yep, exactly. That's me. She says on Instagram, about 30 to 60 minutes after lunch, I ate a huge salad and some avocado toast for lunch. And 30 minutes later, I had a granola bar with Nutella on it. Yep. So, yep. Okay. I got you, Michelle. So yours is Chick-fil-A, #1 plus nuggets in the afternoon. Yep. And the reason, Michelle, and the same thing with Kathy here, and then also Sharon, is only because we've made a pattern of that. And the brain is so good at learning, which is at once awesome and terrible because it can learn really cool stuff like languages and complicated math things and constellations and whatever, and your children's names and how to cook and things. And it can also learn that we like to have sweet things after our salad, and we like to have Chick-fil-A in the afternoon, and these are a good way of changing our emotions so that we feel just a little bit better, as Sharon says, like being energetically worn out from the day, etc. I'm going to actually take all three of your little things here. Michelle, can on YouTube, with the Chick-fil-A, can you tell me, is there any kind of, is it just an urge for you at this point, or is there typically a reason? Like Kathy's reason, well, Kathy's isn't a reason, it's just a pattern, but Sharon's has a lot to do with being worn out. Is it more like Kathy where it's just a craving, or is it like, in this neutral area, or is it because of something like Sharon where you're really tired or whatever? Let me know if you can. So these are some reasons that we can end up overeating, right? Because of these emotions. And I'm sure that we can all relate as well to the wanting to have the positive emotions augmented with alcohol or food or sugar or fried food or appetizers or whatever when we're social or we're going to an event or something. And right, we want to enjoy that fully, so to speak, by having the food as well. So let me look at Kathy's here for a sec. So afternoons, about 30 to 60 minutes after lunch, I eat a huge salad and some avocado toast for lunch. And then 30 minutes later, had granola bar with Nutella on it. Okay. So Kathy, is this an every afternoon kind of a thing for you? Because it is for me. Every time I have my salad in the afternoon, then there's always a craving for something else. So I want to give you some maybe counterintuitive advice. I would love for you to try accepting that part of you, accepting that that's going to happen every day, if it does happen every day, right? Accepting that that's totally normal and that's just who you are. You're going to have a craving in the afternoon about 30. Yep. So she says, absolutely every day. LOL. Okay. So we know this happens every single day. How about my suggestion for you is to embrace that? Like, sounds like the opposite of what you want to do, which is I don't want to be having granola bar with Nutella on it. But what if you embraced it and you said, this is part of me. I'm going to have a granola bar with Nutella after my salad every day. I'll give you an example of something I did recently, which was I started to crave banana ice cream, which is not an unhealthy food, but in my mind, I had thoughts about it like, ooh, I shouldn't be having that as a meal or something. But after a while, I started thinking about it. I was like, you know what? Like, it's bananas. It's got a lot of fiber. I put a little bit of nuts and a little bit of chocolate chips on it, just actually a little bit. I have about 1.5 bananas and about a cup of cherries and then some soy milk. So it has some protein. So I'm thinking to myself, like, it's got protein, it's got fiber, it's got fruit. It's actually a pretty decent meal. It's got fat as well, because I put a little bit of chocolate chips, vegan chocolate chips, and I was doing sliced almonds for a while until I found out that those are a bad food for kidney stones. So I stopped doing those, but sprinkling, I might do even a little bit of tahini, which is also bad for kidney stones, but I've also done a little side of just a little bit of peanut butter, that kind of a thing too. So I thought to myself, man, it's actually not that bad of a meal. It's got some really good stuff in it. So I thought, you know what? I'm actually going to have this for dinner regularly. And so I started to tell myself, look, I'm having it anyway because I was craving it and I started having it. And then I was like, you know what? I'm just going to have it. And what I realized about myself too was like in the evenings are tough for me because I'm a mom of 3 young girls. I'm always alone. My husband works out of town, so I'm solo every week. I've got to do all the routines and all the things. And so I get really worn out, similar to what Sharon said about cooking and making food and all that. And I always end up eating the girls' food and things like that. So I said, you know what? Why don't I just have the thing that I actually want? Not like I'm sitting here, having the cake or whatever, but it's like I found a substitute that I really enjoy that's actually quite healthy. And I was like, let me just have this for dinner. And I have been doing that. I haven't done it in a little while, but I had been doing that for like a month or two, just having the banana ice cream on purpose around 5:30. It completely got rid of my sweet tooth. I used to do this a lot as well back in the day with what I call the emergency sweet tooth smoothie, which is like a thing of kale, like one stalk of kale, a cup of plant milk, a tablespoon of peanut butter, uh, and a frozen banana, a ripe frozen banana. Quick smoothie. And I would have that after my salad every day. And that would really help. And it would completely take away my sweet tooth. So, what I learned over the time was that, and they say this a lot, but until you experience it, it's tough to really understand that, is that when you make foods not off limits, they become way less exciting, right? I don't know if you have any experience with that, but that I always suggest that. So, what I'm saying here, Kathy, is perhaps we know we're going to crave every day. We know this craving is coming up, whether it's because we taught ourselves that. Oh, for you, so you say like, for me, it's boredom. Not like I'm really bored being a mom of 12. I remember now. I remembered earlier, but if I have it with lunch, I would likely find something else at the same time after lunch. I want so much to just eat 3 meals only. Okay, so what the trick here, Kathy, actually, which is what sounds counterintuitive, is if you want to be eating 3 meals, we start with 4. Okay, so it's like saying, I want to be able to run a mile, so we start with walking, right? Or we start with running a block instead of a full mile. So it's these small shifts that we talk about in the family in my programs, that you start with something smaller that feels totally doable for you right now. So I'm not saying you'll never get to 3 meals. I'm saying let's start with 4. And so here's what I would suggest. You know you're going to have that craving after the salad. And you also know about yourself, because you've done the research on yourself, that if you have the Nutella thing right after the salad, you're going to want something else 30 to 60 minutes later. So here's what I might suggest. Do exactly what you did, which is have the salad, have the avocado toast, and then plan 30 to 60 minutes later to have the granola bar with the Nutella, just the way you like it, the way you always have it. Plan to do that for several days. And if you don't necessarily want the Nutella and the bar every day, have the other thing that you like, whatever it is, just plan to have it on purpose. Now, what we're doing in this first few days of doing this is telling ourselves, look, we're going to have it anyway, so it's okay to have it, right? Because the problem is, the real problem is that we're saying we can't have the granola bar with Nutella on it, but we're going to anyway. So might as well just plan it, okay? Now, you're going to plan to have it. So when you make your protocol in the morning, you go, okay, I'm going to have this for breakfast, this for lunch, and then 30 to 60 minutes later, I know I'm going to get a craving, so I'm going to have something to satisfy it, and that's going to be fine. And then I'm going to wait till dinner. And if I'm hungry at dinner, then I'm going to have that, right? And for you, you're saying it's boredom. I'm not sure if it is boredom or not. It could be boredom, but it's just that sort of like lull in the afternoon of what do I do now? People will always tell you, go find a hobby, go do something, whatever. No, don't do that. It doesn't work. It doesn't actually fix the problem of why we're craving, which is because it's a pattern, and it's a pattern you've said you can't have. That's why that craving keeps coming back. That's why that urge keeps coming back, is because you're telling yourself you can't. So first step is to actually plan the thing you're already having. Now, what's so cool about planning, when you actually plan to have it, and you plan the quantity that you were going to have it, that you usually have anyway, just plan it. Do this for a few days while at the same time really pep talking yourself about, I can have this. I would be having it anyway. So I can. It's okay. I can have it. Here's where the magic comes in, Kathy, because the more you do this and the more you tell yourself you can have it, there's a period of time, and it doesn't take very long, where the brain goes, oh, we can have it? I don't really want it. And that's what's so crazy. Hey, Mom, I love you. That's what's so crazy is that after a while, your brain goes, oh, I don't even really want it. I don't care about it or whatever. Like for me with the banana ice cream, I did it for like a month or 2 months or something. And then there was a day where I was just like, oh, I don't want banana ice cream today. And I stopped having it for a while. Your brain will go through these kind of ups and downs with things like, I want this thing now and now I don't want it or whatever, because the reason that we have such strong cravings and such strong urges is because we're telling ourselves we can't. So when we do this with all the foods that we crave, pizza, ice cream, whatever, we do this and we make them not interesting anymore. And the not interesting part happens automatically when you finally get to the place where you say you can have the thing. So I'm going to kind of give you the trajectory here. So Kathy, we start out with, number one, I can't have it. I shouldn't have it. Right? So we think about having a granola bar with Nutella and we're like, no, I really shouldn't have that. That's a bad food. I shouldn't have it. You're like, no, I really shouldn't. Okay. So in the grand scheme of things, a full nutritarian day with one bit of extra food that's not nutritarian in the grand scheme of things is actually not that harmful, right? It might be a little bit harmful depending on how much we're having or whatever. And if we cut back, it might be better for the body, right? But when we're saying can't and shouldn't, we're automatically going to eat way more of it than we need. Okay. So that's what makes the foods actually harmful, is when we overeat on them. Okay. So step one is where we start, which is I shouldn't have that food, whatever. And then we end up having it anyways. And this is actually the same for Michelle, because she says on YouTube, she says, there's no reason, I'm not even hungry, but I just crave it. Exactly. So that's just a pattern that you've created, right? So same advice for you, Michelle, is first of all, let's stop saying can't and shouldn't. Okay. Let's stop saying that. For instance, Michelle says, I struggle with fast food throughout the day. So the idea that you struggle with fast food means you're having it anyway, right? Like part of the time. So let's just say we can have it. Let's get our brain to stop feeling like it's scarce. And once we've gotten to, so what we do there is we plan it. So instead of can't and shouldn't, we plan it. We honor the plan. And while we're honoring the plan, we say, I can. I totally can. I'm a grown-up. I can put any food in my mouth that I want. I have free will. I get to do that. Sure, maybe it's not the best food for me health-wise, but I'm not going to be eating it forever. I'm just trying to get myself used to eating it, okay? So we go, I can. Once we've gotten to I can, and we actually really feel like, look, I'm going to be having Chick-fil-A anyway, so I can have it. I'm a grown-up. I get to make my own choices. Then here's where the fun part comes in, okay? So once we've undone all this crap, which is can't, shouldn't, whatever, and then it also includes a ton of overeating. What's fun, first of all, is that planning, the difference between planning and having based on a craving, when you plan it and you said you could have it and you planned that same quantity, you automatically start to not care as much about the food. And you actually start to make choices after a little while, maybe a week or something. You start to make choices about the food that are like, do I actually want this much? That's the next phase where you go, how much do I actually want? So then the brain starts to go like, well, if I can have it, why am I having this much? Right? It's like, why am I having this much? Or like, for instance, Kathy, yours might go like, you know what? If I can have it every day, I actually am just going to have it every other day. Right? And maybe one day I'm going to have fruit and the next day I'm going to have the Nutella with the granola bar or whatever. Right? And now you've already automatically reduced it because you said, well, how much do I actually want it? And you're like, oh, well, maybe I don't want it every day. And then you don't have it every day because you've actually told yourself you could. Okay. So now you're working through these two parts, planning it, honoring it, letting yourself be the kind of person. Like, it's like when we say, oh, I eat at Chick-fil-A, it's like you're saying it's bad. And I want to pretend like I'm not that person. Right. Like, but it's already happening. So let's just accept it and let's love ourselves for who we are. Let's plan it. And then once we've planned it, yeah, Kathy says, until I run out of granola bars and Nutella. Well, then you want to plan for something else. Like now you want to have something else, right? Maybe it's like I said, an emergency sweet tooth smoothie or something that has some real good whole foods and nutrition or whatever. And then maybe you switch back and forth between Nutella and granola bars one day, and then you have a smoothie, a really sweet date filled smoothie the next day, right? This is a great way to transition through these things where, so maybe the bar and the Nutella aren't the best health-wise, and you think about that and you're like, I really don't want this much processed sugar, so maybe I'll make a smoothie that's whole food sugar, like made out of dates or raisins or whatever, right? And that's all ground up. So then you're like, oh, I'm going to have a smoothie one day. I'm going to plan that. And you're going to be very specific, Kathy, about planning it for 30 to 60 minutes after the meal ends, because that's when that's the part where you have the power to shut off the cravings very easily, just by having the thing and moving on, right? And then maybe you really like that little smoothie, so you have that smoothie for 2 or 3 days in a row, and then you do the granola bar and the Nutella for the next day, whatever. Now notice you're having all whole foods, except for the one day, maybe every few days, where you're having the granola bar or whatever. You've increased the amount of whole foods you had. You don't overeat, right? You're still maybe going like, oh, if I'm full, I only need a little smoothie, or I only need half a granola bar, whatever. You actually start to make decisions about that food based on what you actually want. Okay. Yeah. So she says, oh, I've done that before. Made a chocolate banana peanut butter kale smoothie. Exactly. For a snack. Yum. Thanks. And we can start by adding extra dates or adding extra bananas or something. So the transition from granola bar and Nutella to chocolate, whole food smoothie is easy because it's so sweet and delicious when you use 2 or 3 dates, right? So start there. And then over a week or two, work your way up to 1 date and maybe half a date, or maybe whatever, or maybe we don't need any dates in a little while. And then you're having less but the important part is not to start saying can't again. Can't have Nutella, can't have granola bar. I can always have granola and Nutella if I want it. But what do I really want? Which is a beautiful whole food smoothie, and it tastes amazing and I love it, right? That's how we can go from eating. So for instance, the Chick-fil-A, right? So we have this idea about Chick-fil-A, and we overeat it at times. We have it more than we want to, and we're having it every day, right, Michelle? It's like we have it every day. So the next step here is, first of all, you're going to have it anyway. So you tell yourself you can, right? And so you said a number one plus nuggets. Okay. So perhaps your small shift, like similar to what we did with Kathy with the granola bar to the smoothie, is we just start coming down a little in quantity. So we start with exactly what you're eating, which is the number one plus the nuggets, right? With the soda or whatever it is that you're having. And you just start telling yourself you can have that because you're going to anyway, right? So have it the amount that you're having. If it's every other day, whatever, have it that amount, but plan it. Then what's so good about this, you guys, and this is why this works for everybody, is because when you start planning it and telling yourself you can, the brain isn't in I have to have it mode anymore. It just starts to relax and goes, yeah, I can have Chick-fil-A. It's fine. I do this. And then there's always, I promise you, there's always a moment where the brain goes, I don't want to do this much anymore. Because your rational brain starts kicking in and goes like, I don't really want all this anymore. Okay. So next step, and this is the last step. So how much do I actually want? And so another sentence in here might be like, I don't want that much. Or it might be, I don't want that food every day anymore. Or it might be, I'm just going to have it once a month. I'm going to go to Chick-fil-A once a month, right? Because I can have it. How much do I actually want it, instead of I can't stop, right? So we get to the point where we're like, I don't really want it that much. I'll have it every once in a while, whatever. And then the next step, and this is the last step, is where you get to, I get to eat to live, right? I get to have healthy foods, or I get to have salad or that chocolate smoothie instead of whatever. It's like, I get to. Now you can actually fully be in this feeling of, yes, I get to have this. Okay. But the thing that's really important that I want to point out is that just because you get here doesn't mean you're always going to stay here. For instance, let's say you go on vacation and there's a few days of eating, some stuff that you maybe is not the best for your health or whatever. And you eat this stuff for a little while and then you come home. Start here again. Okay? Ease in again. You can go right back like that if you want to. That's fine. And if it's easy for you. But the problem is most people try to do that and they can't manage it. So, but the more you do this ease in, like maybe I'll call this the ease in, the ease in method, right? Oops, that's supposed to be an N. The more you do this ease in thing, the faster you get with it. So for instance, a couple weeks ago, my daughter was really, it was the end of summer and my girls were going back to school and I really wanted to spend a lot of time with them. So we spent a lot of time together. And I didn't do my exercises for a while. We did go to the pool a lot and I swam. So I had a little bit of exercise, but I wasn't doing my normal exercise routine because I was just spending time with the girls, whatever. And so when I wanted to come back into exercising again, I eased in. It wasn't hard for me to ease in because I've done this so many times. But what I started doing, because I do a lot of weight training at my kickboxing class. And so it had been like 4 weeks since I had done any weight training. So I knew I couldn't start from where I was when I ended, right? I had a little bit of muscle loss or whatever in that 4 weeks. So I started back from where I started a couple months ago with the weight training again. So I went down to 10 pounds instead of 12 and I did less reps and less sets and things like that. And I did less exercises. It only took a week or so for me to kind of get back to where I was. And now I'm further than I was again. And it's only 2.5 weeks later because I just eased in, right? So this idea of easing in on this whole thing is going to lead you to be making decisions based on what you truly want for your health instead of feeling like you can't stop overeating, okay? And Kathy says a couple years ago, I recommended to plan not today, but tomorrow I will. Yep, and that's a huge one. In the program as well, we when we want to actually start not responding to our cravings in a way that's like out of control, like I can't not do it, we say to ourselves, so let's say we made a plan. This would come up here where we say, I made a plan. This is what I'm planning to eat today. And then you get to that 3 or 4 p.m. and you're like, ooh, I really want this other thing, right? So you have two choices. I mean, you have many choices in that case, but the two choices that I would recommend, either you could on the fly change what your plan was to have that new thing, but take out something else that's sort of equal, right? So for instance, let's say you wanted a candy bar instead of the Nutella and granola bar. Fine, just swap them, right? And don't make a big deal out of it. Just swap it. Who cares? Like, don't make a big deal, right? Or the other one, and this is really, really good. And I recommend that people do this just as a matter of practice. This would be great for Michelle. So for instance, you say, let's say it's that evening or that afternoon time and you really want the fast food or whatever. If you haven't planned it, then you go, okay, I can totally have it, but I'm just going to plan it for tomorrow instead, right? So you tell yourself, your brain, you're like, look, brain, I know you really want it right now. And that makes sense because it's delicious. But I also don't want to teach you that we can just have whatever we want whenever we want it. So since you want it, that's cool, but I'm going to plan it for tomorrow. I've had this work so many times. Like one woman I'm working with, when we first started coaching, this isn't her issue anymore because we demolished it within like a week. Her issue was donuts. She would always want donuts. And so we went through this whole ease in process and we said, okay, we're going to change how we think about donuts. We're going to, instead of saying we can't or shouldn't have them, we're going to say we totally can. We're just going to plan them. And when you crave them, don't act on that craving. Like if it's a time where you don't need to eat and you're not hungry or whatever, like don't act on it then. Just say, yep, Donuts are awesome. We can have them, but we're just not going to eat them whenever we want them. We only eat when we're hungry, and we stop when we're satisfied or stop when we're full or whatever. So that means donuts aren't really, they don't really make sense right now. That's okay. So we're going to just take and put donuts in our plan for tomorrow, but we're only going to eat them when we're hungry. And maybe we're going to eat them because we know donuts are a high glycemic food. It's basically like eating pure sugar. So we want to eat something that's healthy ahead of time so we can slow down that sugar uptake a little bit. So maybe you say, okay, we can have them tomorrow, but I'm going to have maybe you want donuts after work or something. So you say, okay, I'm going to make sure I have donuts after work, but I'm going to have maybe a salad ahead of time, or I'll eat some beans, and I want to say too, glycemically, if you were to eat just a couple tablespoons of beans before you ate something like a donut, seriously, your blood sugar will have a better effect. It won't spike as much if you have a little bit of beans. Like, I was wearing one of those continuous glucose monitors just to test it for a couple weeks one time, and I noticed that anytime I ate, I would have lentils in the fridge, and if I'd take a couple bites of lentils and then I ate whatever just to test it, no glycemic response whatsoever. And also, we know that exercising after a food like that, like just going for a 30-minute walk, can completely change the glycemic response as well. So we might say, yeah, we can have donuts, but we're going to do them in a responsible way tomorrow. We're going to have some beans. It sounds weird, but we're going to have a couple spoonfuls of beans first, and then we'll have the donuts, and then we'll go for a little walk. Or we won't go for a walk. We'll just do the beans or something, or we'll have a salad ahead of time or something like that, right? What this does, you guys, is it teaches the brain that, and what we're talking about is two parts of the brain here. So we have the smart, rational, long-term, longevity focused part of your brain called the prefrontal cortex here. And then we've got the sort of in the middle, in the back, we've got this lizard brain, we call it, or the animal brain, or whatever. It's the one that just wants what it wants when it wants it. It wants pleasure. It wants efficiency. It doesn't want pain. It just wants the things. And it also wants to keep you at the weight you're at right now. Okay. And that one is really loud. We listen to that one mostly, right? But what this process does, the ease in process, and the one I was talking about with Kathy about, yes, we can have this, but we're just going to have it tomorrow. That's this part of the brain talking to this part of the brain, going like, yes, donuts are delicious. And so with this client, we did this only for a week. And when she was able to actually plan donuts, it became a very different thing. And within a week, she was like, I don't really want donuts for breakfast anymore, because it didn't feel that great. And she was actually, she actually gave herself time to think about that, when there wasn't the pressure of can't have it, right? Yes, that's right, Kathy. So I use this self-convo with myself when I'm shopping and see a treat, buy it next time, and then I forget about it next trip. I do this with my kids all the time. You did that with your kids too, I'm sure. It's like, yeah, we'll do it tomorrow. And you're just counting on them to forget, right? It happens every time. It works like a charm. But one like little thing I want to leave you guys with, I'm going to take off here, unless you have any questions. So I'm going to say one thing, and while I'm saying it, you guys feel free to ask any questions or give any thoughts here. Does this resonate with you? Will you try this? What is the food that you want to try this with? Let me know in the comments, and then I'm going to take off in a minute. So the last thing I was going to say was an idea about when we say overeating or we say binging, we're always talking about food, right? Of the eating of food. But I'd also like to suggest that when, like Kathy's saying, when we go to a store and we buy a bunch of stuff that we don't need and we know is kind of not really on our plan, and we're justifying it because we're like, oh, it's on sale, or it's a really good price, or my kids like it, or my husband likes it, or whatever. And we're kind of like lying to ourselves a little bit, because we just want to eat that thing. We want it in the house, and we want to like have the issue with it and then overeat it, right? That is actually considered a binging activity or an overeating activity. Okay. So that's actually a grocery store binge, right? Like a buying binge. You don't actually need the food, and you don't technically want it. This part of the brain doesn't technically want it, but you buy it anyway in kind of a large quantity or a small quantity, but you don't need it, and you actually really don't want it long term. You can consider that as binging, right? You bought something you didn't need. It wasn't useful for you, but you did it anyway. It's the same thing as when we end up binging on stuff or overeating to the point of pain or discomfort. We didn't need it, but we couldn't overcome that urge. Same thing with shopping. Okay, you can consider that a binge as well. If you buy too much, that's a binge on money. Okay. Okay, no comments or anything like that I see. So I want to say thank you so much for hanging out with me today. It's been lovely. I hope you learned something. Let me know in the comments after this video is done if you learned something or if it was useful for you. And of course, say hi to me if you're watching the replay. All right, it's Tuesday. I'll see you guys will I see you next week, Tuesday? I'm going out of town this weekend. I think I'm going to do, I have plans to do a video next week as well, another live video. So bring your questions, bring your thoughts. We are just in the red tape portion of trying to post this podcast and get things up. So you can look out for that really soon. I know I've said it a million times lately, but for real, it's happening soon. And just so you know, I have a new community that I'm opening up. It's actually open right now, so you could join it. It's not active really. There's only a few people in there. But if you go to, now the name, this is a really long name of my new website because all the other names were taken. So it's really long. I apologize for that. I tried to buy some shorter names, but I couldn't get in contact with the owners. So the new website is going to be called howtostopbingeeatingforever.com. Okay. And the new community is on school. Maybe you haven't used school yet. That's okay. If you go to school.com/how to, takes so long to write, but it is what it is. Binge eating forever. School.com/how to stop binge eating forever. That will give you 2 groups. I've got a free group and I have a premium group. The premium group is not active yet. The free group isn't really active yet either, but you can join it. The free group, obviously it's free, and this is where everyone is going to be congregating now. So if you want to head in and get in there, this is the place we'll be. Then we can start talking more about this stuff. Okay. You're welcome, Mona Jonah. So happy to see you. Thank you everyone else for being here, and I hope you have a great day. I'll see you next week. Bye.